different things. We just want to be in touch with y'all. Will you do that? Awesome. Thank you. Well, man, I'm excited to have a good friend of mine here, Steve Miller. I met Steve. Steve is a lot of things. Steve is a great businessman. He's a very successful business person. He's in the pallet business. And so he likes to talk about pallets. But he has a very successful business called Millerwood Incorporated in Canton, Ohio. And besides that, 27 other locations in the United States. I think they're one of the biggest pallet companies in the United States. And besides being a very successful business person, he's a Christian and part of the church and understands as a business person the church part of that. And so I invited Steve. He's also part of the Equip, which is John Maxwell's nonprofit organization. He's one of the board members. Besides that, Steve travels to different countries as a trainer, and he'll go in and speak and train with us with everything we do with Maxwell. So he's just a guy that's got a great heart, and I love hanging out with him. He's high energy, fun, exciting. There's only one hiccup in the whole relationship. He lives in a state that's just to the south of here. He talks about it a lot. A lot. Are you an alumni? No, your kids went there. Anyways, he's a Buckeye through and through. Oh, my Lord. He was driving up, and we were texting back and forth, and he said, I'd be there sooner, but he said, I can't remember what it was. I think these Michiganders can't drive worth crap. And so I said, well, why don't you hang those Buckeye flags out the window a little bit and see how things go on your way up. So anyways, we have a big time, and Steve's going to add tremendous value to this lunch and then the next session. So, Steve, thank you for being here. Come on up. Everybody give Steve a hand. Oh, you're going to jump up? All right. Man. Come on now. You grab that mic. That's yours.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful, warm applause for a Buckeye. Appreciate that. Yeah, so...
Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself, just family and that part of it.
Yeah, got 3 boys. One just graduated from the Miami University in Ohio. And my middle son, I'll pause for effect, is attending the Ohio State University. You know, they played that Oklahoma team this week.
We know that.
Yeah. You know, that team Ohio State happens to be ranked number 1 in the country right now.
That's not true, they're number 2.
Depending on which poll you look at, sir. Okay. Depending on which poll you look at, okay, it's number 1. I got my own polls. Okay. One little guideline, okay, just so we get off to a good start here. Little guideline, I have the microphone, okay? Sorry, John, I got a little emotional there.
Hey, as we're talking about, is James Sonic? Where's James? James, can you run up here real quick? You know, James, before he was in ministry, was a magician. And, of course, we're always wanting him to do magic, but maybe he can make Steve disappear. I don't know. No, but James, come on up here real quick. Nobody wants to use the stairs in this place. Everybody up here is over 50, and I think I'm the youngest of them. You just had back surgery. You told me a joke on the way. Could you tell me that joke?
Yeah. Okay, in a car, you have the Ohio State quarterback, the Ohio State wide receiver, and the defensive lineman.
I don't like this joke.
Who's driving? A cop.
All right, we had to do that, Steve. We had to do it.
Thanks for stopping in, James. Appreciate it.
You were on your second son.
Yes, so that's where my second son is. And then I have my third son, who's a senior in high school. And my lovely wife Julie is not able to attend because she's attending to my son who needs attention.
That's good. You know, Steve is profound. We bring profound thinkers up on stage. I'm just teasing. Steve's a great man. See, one of the things that we're going to talk about, Steve's going to talk about in the next session, has to do with, and when we sent out the promotion about this, has to do with Steve as a businessman, and as a person that is active in his church, to help us understand, you all as business people, how to connect and add value in the church, and at the same time, those of us that are pastors, leaders, that are church leaders, how do we connect with the business people in our church, help develop them, help them reach their maximum potential, and also business people in our community that are highly successful, have great influence. How do we help them use that influence in the church or through the church? So that's what we want to talk about, and Steve will talk a lot more about that in our next session. But just to start things out and ask you a few questions, Steve. First question: what, as a business person, how do you, knowing both sides, because you're connected in the church and you're a Christian businessman, what's your perspective of the church as a business person? What would you expect? What would you want to happen? Maybe it has happened. Talk to us a little bit about that. Just your perspective as a business person looking at the church. What can the church do? What can leaders do? What do you expect from the church, and what can the church do to help you reach your full potential and to help you leverage your gifts, your callings, and everything to do with that?
Well, I think that the thing that has been most beneficial for me, other than just being committed to church and being engaged and allowing that growth that happened just by being present and attentive. There was a mentor that I had growing up, very successful business guy, 8th grade education, and strong Christian beliefs. And he would always, I was, as a young kid, I always knew I was an entrepreneur. I always wanted to be in business. I was always, wanted to see what the secrets were. And he would always say the same thing. He says, well, I don't know a lot. I'm not real smart, but I work hard and I go to church. And those basic baseline things. But we've got hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of Christian business guys, quotation marks, that call themselves Christians, but that's it. They're just a Christian businessman. They're not, yes, we know we're supposed to create wealth for the kingdom of God. That's what we do. We're supposed to be in the marketplace. But they kind of draw the line and say, well, here's business and here's ministry. And as if there's some kind of line that says that we as individuals have, that ministry is reserved only for those that are working in the church. And we all know that that's not true. So I think the engagement of the business community as a group and challenging each other to how they're reaching their people. How are you reaching the people that show up to work every day in your work, in your place of business? How are you reaching the people that you work with? Because that is a challenge that God has given all of us to be that kind of light. And so I think to answer your question about, what can the church do? A lot of it is this, of creating this environment, setting the table so that not for me to lead it, but that I can go and I can connect with other guys that are in the same stream that I am. We talk a lot about the streams of influence, all the 7 streams. But get those streams together and connected, and there's just natural energy and motivation that happens from that. I'm recently, a guy put a group together of CEOs that were all Christian, faith-based guys, and we're doing something in the workplace. And it was amazing how just spending 2 hours in that room with those other guys, 10 other guys, talking about what they're doing for their people. How are they recruiting? How are they keeping? How are they ministering to them? And it was amazing what guys are doing, because in today's marketplace, in the work environment where unemployment is less than 5%, it's 5 to 7%, however you want to do the numbers, but there's a whole lot of people that don't really want to come work for me, right? We're in a labor-intensive environment, and there's always that challenge of keeping your place staffed. So coming up with unique ways, and that's really what it is, coming up with unique ways to meet the needs of the individuals coming in your door every day, because it's not all about wage. Studies show that over and over again. It's not about the wage. It's how the people are treated, what they feel when they walk in, and do you care about them? And of course, we care about all those natural things, but then the ultimate care is, are you going to heaven? Do you know Christ? Do you have a relationship with him? And in our world, like I said, it's all labor intensive, and it's tough work, it's hard, dirty work, and I know that I make the assumption that you're never going to go to church. You're not church people, and I say this to them, and that's my message to our team members: is that it doesn't matter whether you go to church or don't go to church, but that shouldn't keep you from having a relationship with Christ. You can have a relationship with Christ regardless of what your background is, what you are or are not going to do. So that's kind of the challenge that we send out. But putting us together in the room around a table is the most motivating and most thing that causes the most growth.
So you're saying something that could add great value to a business community, and there's pastors from large cities here, there's pastors from small towns here, but no matter what, there's a business community, many or few. If the church could be the catalyst to somehow, some way, bringing them together, you're saying that adds great value and could be the catalyst for business people to interact, to help each other, have great ideas. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, we do it for our teams as well. That I tell our guys, we talk about leadership development, training our leaders, doing something like that, and being systematic about it. So there's follow-up and those kind of things. And they were my executive team was getting all caught up in what the curriculum was.
You're talking about your team. You're talking about your business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. At the business, we're trying to figure out. What curriculum, what are we going to train them in, and all that kind. And that's very important, but it's a small part of it. As leaders, what we do is we create the environment, we create the opportunity, meaning the location, okay? We put a curriculum together, and we also fill the room with the right people. So that if we're going to do a training, we want to make sure that we've got the right mix of people in there, that they are connecting with each other at a higher level than they've connected in the past. They hear each other's stories. They have all that kind of effect. So really, the curriculum itself, what's happening on the stage, so to speak, is only a third of what you're really planning. And as a person being developed, or as a leader, that's our responsibilities. We gotta create the environment, and we gotta make sure that the right people are in the room. And I think as a church, that's a service that they can just be intentional about, is that you're trying to get and it's not just the business community, as you think about how you're reaching your community, but it's all the streams of influence. Getting the like and kind streams. If you got a group of nurses, get them together and let them talk about how they're ministering. Let them talk about how they're doing life together, how, where their faith is, and let them challenge each other. That just happens, that motivates them naturally. And like I said, this is what happens today. What you guys experience and what you guys enjoy about coming in here to the LINC event is that you're here with other pastors or other business guys. Yeah, amen.
It's pretty normal in Mexico. We have gunfire all the time. Just if it's 2 or 3 shots at the same time, you should get down. If just one, don't worry about it.
Just one. It's too late to move now. But you have all the casual time, the casual conversation that generates relationships, which produces teamwork and produces growth and produces a bonding. Because I've always said that the team that doesn't bond together cannot grow together. I've always said that. John Maxwell said it too. Waiting for somebody to stand up. No, you didn't. Where's my friend at? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, had to go get your child. Yeah. What? He was out playing in the street? Okay. Nice job.
All right, here's a question for you. You've got a pastor has successful business men and women in his church, and he really desires for them to be engaged. In other words, they have great influence outside the church, but to be engaged in the church. Well, the most common way of doing that is to serve. Mm-hmm. So as a pastor kind of rides that tension of, this guy is well known in my community. He's a very successful businessman or woman, either one. I want him to be connected in the church, but is there levels of service? I know most business people come in and say, hey, I'm willing to serve anywhere, but what should a pastor do to leverage? I'm your pastor. How do I leverage Steve Miller, who's part of my church, his influence to influence in the church and from the church outside the church? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, that's very common. I mean, it's common for a pastor to ask that question, how do I get this particular individual? Right now we're talking about a business leader. How do I get them engaged? And that's a question that we're all, as leaders, we're asking that every day. How do I get my guys engaged so they're not just showing up as zombies and putting their time in, but you want them engaged? And I think from the pastor's perspective, it's that challenge that you're putting to your general congregation that to be engaged, to serve, okay? And it's up to the individuals to pick which area they can serve in, but it's up to the church to make those areas available so that it's easy to step in. Now, depending who we're talking about, if you're talking about the CEO of Delta, that's going to be a different, Ed Bastian's personal friend of mine. Is it wrong to, okay. Because he serves on the board, so we see each other, and I'm pretty sure he knows my name, so we're pretty close. But, guys like that, if you're talking about being in the big city of Atlanta and you've got, guys that are running global companies and stuff that are pulled a lot of different ways, they're traveling a lot, and that happens in every community, where certain business guys or their jobs just require them to travel a lot. So when they're home, it seems like, shouldn't you be serving in the church, 2-3 days a week and, away from your family? No, the answer is no. You should not, you should, but you got to find those little pieces where a guy like that can serve, and it might be ways of saying, I've got a breakfast that I want you to speak to the other business guys and challenge them and bring them in. So it's a one-time event where they're coming, they're serving, they're sharing their influence, because you get somebody like that, success draws attention, right? Everybody knows that success draws attention. And that's been my prayer since I was 19 years old, is that, I would be successful because it does draw attention. And when they get close enough, they would see the love of Christ in all that I'm doing and how I'm doing business. That's our desire as Christian business leaders, is that we're drawing attention. And when they get close, they see Christ. And they leave our presence with a challenge to say, how can I do that in my workplace? How can I take that presence and expand it in the workplace? So, but yeah, there's no, obviously, how do you engage that? Obviously, individuals that, but I think being intentional, just asking yourself the question is that, do I have unique places that the different streams can serve and the different types of individuals can easily come in and serve? Where it doesn't take coordination. They don't have to create something. They don't have to be in charge of something and prepare for something. They just come in and serve.
So as you love to serve and not have to lead.
Right.
Just serve.
Right.
Just serve.
Yep. Yeah, I don't want to lead it, but
that's good. Would you have any problem with your pastor? Okay, the first part of your answer had to do with general. Just keep it before the people. Everybody being part of, connected in, plugged in. But if your pastor sat down with you or invited you to coffee and say, Steve, Man, I'd love to have you plugged in somehow, some way, even though you're out of this world busy, but yet he wants to get you plugged in and to serve in the church. Would you take that as an offense, as an honor? How would you take that?
Well, if we had that conversation, my first answer would be, what do you got in mind? You know, where do you want me? Because I'm not going to take the initiative, knowing this, and this is true for all leaders, is that if you're a leader of influence, like Clay spoke about this morning, I thought that was so good about, you know, leading from influence and not from authority. But if you're one of those individuals, you can go to the pastor and say, hey, I want to start a Bible study. Can I lead it? You know the answer is typically going to be yes, okay? Because of who you are, or maybe, you know, if you're a leader. And so that was one of the things that when kind of like, you know, how God dealt with me was, I felt, this is when I was in my early 20s, and there was a vacancy in the college age class to teach. And I thought, man, somebody needs to teach that. You know, that's a critical age group, you know. And I was still in that age group, but, you know, I was starting my business. Chose to forego college because I was raised in Ohio and didn't need it. So now up here, I think it's different. You kind of require that. But so I thought about that position. I thought, well, I know that if I go to the pastor and say, hey, you know, you want me to teach that class, you know, I'm willing to do it. I knew the answer would be yes. And so my prayer was, okay, God, if you want me to do that, then you have somebody ask me to do that, okay? But I'm not going to ask, okay? And so, unfortunately, that day, it was like a day or two later, some little old lady in the church calls up. Brenda Miller was her name, no relation. Little old Brenda says, hello, Steve. Hello, Brenda. She says, I was just praying about that college class, and she had grandkids that would attend and stuff, and she says, I think you're just the right person to do that. So I think you need to pray about teaching that class, and I'm going to say something to Pastor Dana and see if that would be okay. I said, thanks for calling, Brenda. And that's still my kind of my guideline today as far as where do I go to speak and you know, where do I give my time to?
A call from Brenda?
What's that?
A call from Brenda?
Yeah, Brenda's had hip surgery, so she's not doing real well. But no, that if I'm asked to go and it works in my schedule, I'm just going to do it. You know, I'm still going to charge my normal fee, which, by the way, is typically $20,000 for a speaking engagement. So I decided to waive that for two reasons. One, because I love John and I love what you guys are about, so I waived it, all right? Yeah. And the other reason is that John refused to pay me anything, okay? He did take me to Carrabba's last night, okay? So I got that, appreciate that. And the other thing is that my $20,000 fee for speaking that I always charge, so far, no one has ever paid that. And I've spoken all over the world. But it's still my fee, just so you know. So that's what I'm doing.
All right, we have about 4 minutes, and I'm going to let somebody ask a question. So I'm going to ask somebody to grab this mic, and if you have a question, raise your hand. The question obviously should be directed. James has a question. Dan, thank you. Thank you. James is back there in the middle. James is loud. James, you can just shout it out if you want.
Is there anybody else other than James that's...
I won't ask what the defensive lineman got on their final exam, because we all know it's drool. But anyway. I do have a question. I really do.
Can't wait.
In some of my experience, you'll find somebody from the business community extremely successful. So their talent and ability in the business market is way up here. Their Christianity and their relationship is down here. What is the best way to disciple people very successful in the business community that are new believers. What does that look like? Do you try to get them in a small group of peers, or how do you kind of take them under your wing and disciple them, I guess is my question, for a high level or successful business person?
Is that directed at me? Thank you for your question, sir. Yeah, I mean, I can just, give you my personal opinion, and that doesn't, it means it's mostly right. But I think that getting, by the peers, it's the influence of peers that drives us. And so, again, it's that small group, that round table. If you can create that environment to get somebody like that in, that is where their influence is up here, their Christianity is maybe middle of the road, and if you can get even one or two in a group of 5, 1 or 2 that are maybe as a 10 in their Christianity, and they're business guys. They get it. They have the same struggles regardless of the scale. If you have 10 employees or 100 employees, you still have the same issues that you're working through with customers and all those kind of things, that you have commonality. So that, to me, is the best way that causes everybody just to challenge each other, is getting them in that small group. I know that, and again, it goes back to who the individual is, because some pastors have the ability that's in them where they do mentoring of business guys. There's a guy in my hometown in Canton that the pastor, he's not my pastor, but he spends a lot of time with local business guys. And some go to his church, some don't, but he mentors them and spends time with them and challenges them in all kinds of things in their home life and also in their spiritual walk as well. So it depends on the individual. If the pastor, if that's in him, then he should certainly be doing that. But as a group, as a congregation, I think the challenge is creating that group setting for that guy to get plugged into that causes that kind of growth.
So it's creating that environment that they can be together. What about the pastor that, just a thought as you were speaking, that would dedicate, he has a high potential business men in his, and because I'm going to use the male context, and this is cross-gender. Obviously, we have to be careful with one-on-one stuff, but he feels like if I can mentor Steve, and then Steve, and Steve would be willing to help my other business. So he's making one investment in Steve, and then Steve is going to begin to build that enviment. Would that be something that would be key?
And that's actually what happened in our church. We have a large church, usually 3,000-4,000 people on a weekend. And that was the challenge, is there was a core group of business guys, and I was in the initial group, but then I slowly backed away because there was responsibility involved. But some of them stepped up, because that was, again, I go back to what's in you and what's God putting in front of you. But some of that is what happened, is that some of them took the initiative and said, okay, we need to do something. There was nothing going on in the church for the business community. And so there was a list of, 4, 5, 6 things that they thought should happen, whether it be we want to call those the booklet with all the business names and all that kind of stuff. Having something like that, something simple like that to connect and see who goes to this church, who provides services. That was a good thing. But what happened was a couple business guys started taking that as a responsibility. It wasn't the pastor driving it, it wasn't anything like that. But it was just, some guys that got together, and they kind of got a charge out of it. Because it was 3 or 4 of them, and they would get together, once every other week or whatever, and work on a project and say, hey, we're going to do this event, and we're going to set it up, and we're going to have these people here. And then the right people get in the room because you got the right people organizing it. And, I often think about, the best way to start a movement or, to get momentum is that endorsement. It's not the guy doing the initial thing. It's the guy that's next to him that waves his hand and says, hey, we should do what he's doing. Which is like inviting somebody to church, that says, hey, it's a little different because you're saying, come see my pastor, so that's a little self-serving. People take that way, it's a good thing to do, certainly should be inviting people. But it's when somebody on the outside is pointing at something and saying, giving the endorsement of that, which is really what we want the business community doing. is being out in the marketplace, endorsing what God's doing in the church and sending that message. So
That's cool. That's cool. Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Let's give him an applause to Steve. Thank you.